produces more terrorists than any other nation in the world and suffers through terrorism more than any other nation in the world. It's a revolving door. You go in prison, you go right back from prison. Now, the excuse is that, there's always, and I will get that after I finish speaking, I will get somebody who will give excuses for terrorism. There's excuses all over the time, excuses. If terrorism is caused by occupation, why there is terrorism in Iraq against Chaldean Christians? They got nothing to do with occupation. Why there is terrorism acts against Coptic Christians in Egypt? They got nothing to do with no occupation. It's an issue of poverty. Poverty is what causes terrorism. People who live in poverty commit terror acts. I said, okay, occupation, poverty, all these things, we understand, we sympathize with these things. But here's my question. If occupation and poverty are the root causes of terrorism and blowing yourself up, how come you will never find a Christian suicide bomber? Can anybody name me one Christian suicide bomber? They're all Muslim. Why? If you find the name, bring it up. You can't find it. But you say, wait a minute, Christians are not accustomed to terrorism. That's not true. You got Irish terrorists. The PFLP, Popular Front to Liberate Palestine, led by George Habash, he croaked a couple months ago. He was Palestinian Christian, like Hanan Ashrawi. Whenever George Habash won a terror act against Israel, and he wants a suicide bombing, because those seem to cause most destruction, he will always borrow a Muslim to carry it out. So both suffer the same thing. Why one is blowing himself up and the other is not? Poverty. At one university campus, I deal with a lot of stupid professors. The professor stood up and he says the issue one is poverty. So I asked the question. I said, is there any Africans, Indians in the crowd? One guy with a big turban, Sikh, he raised his hand. He said, I'm from India. I said, do you guys have lots of poverty in India? He says, yeah, we got lots of poverty in India, lots of poverty, that accent. I said, do you guys blow yourselves up as a result of poverty? He says, we got lots of poverty in India, but we don't blow ourselves up. However, they come from Pakistan and they blow us up. Yeah. In fact, Muslims like to kind of argue a lot of times, say, look, India lived under great peace with Islam, which is not true. In fact, in India alone, it is estimated 80 million were butchered in India. Look at the writings of Babur Nama. As a matter of fact, the majority of massacres that happened in history was in India when the Muslims massacred 80 million. Taj Mahal, skulls that, forts of skulls that were built. Are we to ignore history? I guess we live in a time that you can't talk about history. You can't talk about the Armenian massacre. You can't talk about Smyrna massacre. You can't talk about massacres galore against Christians. But the only massacres you can talk about is the Jenin massacre. Well, I have no problems with talking about Jenin. I got no problems with talking about Deir Yassin. I got no problems with talking about any of these things. Because what's wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter who commits it. A Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or an atheist. What's wrong is wrong. Baruch Goldstein, when he walked into the Abrahamic Mosque in Hebron and shot 50 Muslims while they pray, is terrorism. There's no excuse for it. However, the difference is that you'll find hundreds of thousands of Jews condemning it. But you don't find the same thing from the Muslim community, which is a problem. So, when you look at CARE, Council of American-Islamic Relations, look at some of the leadership. Let's see. Fawaz Damra, signatory to CARE, and he gave also a fatwa condemning terrorism. He gives fatwas to condemn terrorism in English, but nobody listens to the Arabic. Well, some of us can translate Arabic. Would anyone like to donate for the Intifada, for Islamic Jihad? I say it frankly, for Islamic Jihad. This jihad which is still blazing in Palestine from village to village. I am telling you, not for the organizations or anything else. With due respect to everyone, but only for jihad. One of them goes out of his house with a knife to stab the Jews. 12 Jews after the Gulf events. Oh brothers, the Intifada is calling upon you. $500? Who is going to top the $500? It's an auction. Who is going to do $500 for this medal? And whoever wants to write a check, they can write it in the name of the Islamic Committee for Palestine, ICP, for short ICP, whoever likes to write a check. This is stated by Fawaz Damra in 1991. Now, I always get accused that I'm doing my job for the money. I get paid, big bucks, Zionist bribes. You think I want to come to Michigan to speak? I don't think I want. I don't like coming to speak anywhere, university, especially university. Why? Well, university students think that they know it all. I can go to a farm in America where people chew and spit tobacco, and they get it. But at a university, it's hard to get it, and I can't understand why. When you even just quote the speech, you're Islamophobe. Why am I an Islamophobe for quoting a speech? I didn't make that speech. The guy that CARE supports makes that speech. You think it's only one statement. You think it's only one outfit of CARE. Boy, do you have maybe 20 hours, 30 hours just to read the stuff? Ghassan Elashi, founding director of Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of CARE, former IAP. On April 13th, Elashi was convicted on 21 counts of conspiracy, money laundering, and dealing in property of a terrorist. Omar Ahmed, co-founder and former national chairman of CARE. Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant, he said. The Quran, the Muslim book of scripture, should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Islam, the only accepted authority and religion on earth. So it's an authority and it's a religion. It is a dogma mixed with religion. You got to separate the religion from the dogma. And you got to start saying anybody who harbors that kind of sentiment should not be allowed to live in this country. Should not be allowed to immigrate to this country. Should not be allowed to give a student visa into this country. Is that a crime to ask for the protection of your children? Your borders? I don't understand the youth today. Your grandfathers bled for you so you can have the freedom to criticize Christianity. You have that right. But remember who paid for that right. I only began to understand American history in 1993, first time I began to look. In 1991, I made a trip to Israel. I began to ask questions. America built what is called critical thinking, something I'm not used to as I was growing up. Critical thinking. I was with my uncle, driving in a car, riding in his car, and I began to look at the walls. I'm not used to this anymore. Graffiti all over the walls. I said, Uncle, I make a bet with you. You will not find a square meter that doesn't have graffiti in the entire country. How come we have so much graffiti? Either whitewashed graffiti or just new fresh graffiti. What kind of graffiti? نقرع أبواب الجنة بجماجم اليهود. We knock on the gates of heaven with the skulls of Jews. Uncle, is there a different way to go to heaven? I went to Hebron. And in Hebron, my turning point. I was in a taxi cab and I witnessed an event in which a Palestinian community was stoning. They were stoning a Jewish bus that picked up Jewish workers to take them home, Kiryat Arba. I could barely see the bus. I could see wire mesh on the bus, bulletproof glass, barbed, wire, that kind of thing, all around the bus. The bus looked like a cage. I said, these people live in a cage. How come I could barely see the bus? Like locusts, the stones. I began to ask the taxi cab driver. I said, well, how come these people are not allowed to live amongst us? Are we special?